Hello and welcome to our Friday webinar. We are back on with Pamela Clark. Welcome back. You came back. This is awesome.
I am so happy to be back.
We're on episode. This is our 2 in a row. So last Friday was the very first episode of your webinar series, Translating Parrot. We talked about travel, and today, man, I am so excited because I think this is a topic that's been long coming, and that's on cockatoos. So this is going to be an exciting one. I hope everybody, I mean, even if you don't have if you've never had the chance to be with a cockatoo for any amount of time, these are interesting birds. So I think of any bird that deserves its own webinar, probably a cockatoo would be a first choice. So very excited to see what we unravel here. Let's see, if you're just joining us, we're going to be talking about cockatoos, but if you have any questions, use the Q&A button and we'll get to those hopefully towards the end of the webinar. And I forgot to ask you, are we doing a screen share today? Because I need to make you a co-host. Okay. Yes. All right, there we go. Okay. So I know we have people that I'm just seeing the numbers tick up as people log in. So this is really cool. And I wanted to share a little video while we wait for people to log on. Hopefully this goes well, but I found this and I thought I want to get your thoughts on this as well. Can you see that? Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, there's a tourist in Australia.
I'll give you a little platter.
I'm gonna share.
Here you go.
With this random cockatoo.
Don't bite me, please.
A few moments later.
Oh no. Oh, that's so funny.
Oh, the cockatoo show up. I love that one. Anyways.
I'll give you a little platter.
Oops. Am I still showing it? Let me try to get that off. But I thought that was funny, right? That's like I gotta stop. I gotta stop. Well, shoot, I should just share it again. I can't get it to stop sharing. Sorry. Okay, there we go. We're just gonna show it one more time because it's so funny. It's so funny. All these cockatoos show up. And then the one gives her a little nip at the end as she's feeding him. Yeah, so. Okay.
I'll give you a little platter.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I'll figure out on my end why I keep playing this video. That was a bad idea.
It's not showing up on the screen anymore.
No, but I can hear it. Okay, that's bizarre. Let me try this. Okay. Anyways, if you're just logging on. Oh, I got to exit it. That's what I have to do. Okay. All right. I silenced it. Okay. There we go. So I'll let you take it away after that. But I thought that was funny.
Very good. Yes.
So that's what you encounter if you've been to Australia, right? Just cockatoos all over the place. I haven't had the chance to go there, but I heard they're plentiful in the wild there.
They are very plentiful there. Yes. I have been to Australia 3 times. And it's pretty remarkable to be there and be driving down the road and see maybe 100 sulfur-crested cockatoos on a baseball field just foraging, or in a park somewhere. It's quite a thrill seeing the birds.
Wow.
Okay, so today we are talking about unraveling the mysteries of cockatoos. We all know, I think, we would all agree that they have a reputation as being challenging companions. I know for a fact that they are one of the most frequently relinquished group of species. I get a lot of consultation requests for cockatoos. Probably 50% of my clientele are cockatoos. I have spoken to rescue personnel who also see cockatoos as more challenging to place into a new home. There is one rescue organization that requires that any adopting person, if they want to adopt a cockatoo, she insists that they first have a consultation with me as a stipulation for the adoption. And I think you'll understand why by the time we get to the end of today's presentation. And then most sadly of all, a lot of them wind up in sanctuary. Why is this sad? Because when a bird has lived for years and years with a person and is bonded to a person, that's what that bird knows socially. And he doesn't want to be in a big flight full of other cockatoos. He doesn't know how to do that. So I see the issue of cockatoos winding up in sanctuary as something I would very much like to see change. So what makes cockatoos so different? Why are they so weird? Why do people have so many problems with them? I'm here to tell you they really aren't. If they are well reared and if they are provided with an environment that meets their needs, they're not going to be any more difficult than any other parrot. And they do not have any special needs as adult birds, despite the urban legend about cockatoos, right? How often have you heard them described as loud, demanding, needy, and especially cuddly? We like cuddly. They have been called Velcro birds. They crave petting and may become depressed if not given enough attention. These are all things that I found online just recently as said about cockatoos. But these really are misperceptions only. I love this quote by Anais Nin. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. This has never been truer for any subject than it is for cockatoos and their people, because the truth is cockatoos are not cuddly birds. We are cuddly humans, and therefore we have skewed and created we've just created problems with these birds, and I'll explain more. And, you know, we come through it honestly. It's not that we intend ever to cause them harm. We, as humans, as mammals, you know, our mode of exploring the world is to use our hands. It's normal for us to touch things. And moreover, our history with our companion animals has been that we always form bonds through touch with them. But if you do that with parrots, it results in a lot of problems because birds are not mammals. So what is it really that is occurring? To understand this, we have to look at the current rearing practices for baby cockatoos, as well as the nature of pair bonds that our cockatoos form. You know, we've got to embrace the fact that we've got a lot of different species that we keep as pets in captivity, and they are all very, very different from each other. So we can't always just do the same things with all of them and have a good result. So let's look at what's really normal for cockatoos in the wild when it comes to rearing their offspring. We can have some pretty good ideas because, we can thank a breeder by the name of Katie McElroy specifically. She once bred large and small cockatoos in Ohio, and she realized early on, as did other breeders, that if you have a hand-fed large cockatoo, either an umbrella, sulfur-crested, or a Moluccan cockatoo, and I just lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. So she realized that these hand-fed birds were not good breeders. Things went wrong. They could not produce eggs and viable babies. So she realized that to protect these species in captivity, she was going to need to allow her wild-caught pairs to raise their own babies. And she was smart enough to use nest box cameras. She wrote an article about this a long, long time ago where she brought this problem out into to everybody's attention, I think probably for the very first time. So this is what she found. When she allowed her wild-caught pairs to rear their own babies, they did not wean them until they were 12 months old. And even after that, if the baby was upset, distressed in some way, the father would provide comfort feedings. And there was a near constant level of physical attention provided to those babies. So let's take a minute and compare this to Amazons, which I think are just about as different as they can possibly be. We know from observations made in the wild that Amazon parents are pretty neglectful, actually. They stay out of the nest cavity for most of the day. They'll just go in and feed the babies quickly and then pop right back out again. So if you compare the way that Amazons are reared by their parents with our typical rearing conditions, you can see that there is less difference than there is between the large cockatoo weaning times and the this constant level of feeding and attention that the birds are provided with. So you can see then that the typical rearing conditions that we provide are 100% different than what these birds really need. Incubator hatching is very common, so the birds often don't have any contact at all with their parent birds. For a bird who's going to live to be maybe 90 years old, I think that is really a problem. Also, isolation is typical. It's normal for one baby to be in one plastic tub so that he doesn't even have the reassurance of other baby parrots in there. Typically, cockatoos are force weaned at about 4 to 5 months as opposed to a year. So you can see how the system then produces a needier parrot. And then a pattern of behavior solidifies once the bird is adopted into its first home, because a baby parrot who did not get its needs met for physical closeness is going to seek physical closeness. It knows on some level that that's what it needs for development, and they seek that from the first owner. And then this meets our needs, because we like cuddly, right? There's a lot of people who get cockatoos because they believe that they are cuddly and they want them to be cuddly. And so this continuation. So, what would be okay is if the young baby were provided with a lot of physical reassurance by the first owner and then slowly weaned off of that. But that's not what happens, because it meets our needs, our emotional needs to have this bird ever present. And so we develop a Velcro cockatoo, and then that bird becomes a holy terror. Why does this happen? It happens because cockatoos form very strong pair bonds. This is another way that they're different from other species. African greys form fairly loose pair bonds. That's why I can have male and female greys in my house and have for years, and I never have any problems. You could never do that having a male and a female cockatoo. There would likely be some fairly serious problems. And so pair bonding in cockatoos is characterized by frequent physical closeness. Now, physical closeness with a human appears to trigger a pair bond with the parrot. I have been doing this for so many years now that I am 100% positive that this is true. And I've done quite a bit of investigating how proximity is interpreted by both people and parrots. I'm about to publish a blog post about that. And if you do study this, you'll find that there is a discipline within the human psychology field called proxemics. And it talks about how humans organize our societies through proximity. 0 to 18 inches is the intimate zone. 18 inches to about 2 to 3 feet is going to be our personal space, or known as our bubble. And then there's a social zone and a public zone. Well, because parrots live in flocks, proximity is critically important to them. I would even go so far as to say it is a primary reinforcer to them. And parrots are never close to each other, generally speaking, unless they have a pair bond with that other bird, just like the photo shows here. And then when a pair bond develops, this results in an increase in the production of reproductive hormones. And then we have what I refer to as the cockatoo disaster pattern. So just to review, a baby who's been force weaned and deprived of physical closeness is adopted. The baby seeks physical closeness. The person goes online to figure out what to do and is told, oh, yes, that baby needs to be held all the time. And so then the cockatoo enjoys being attached to the person in some way because it meets our needs. A pair bond is formed and then maintained through continued closeness. And then this is what you get. It begins with demanding screaming. Because when a bird has a pair bond with you, that bird begins resource guarding. In other words, you become that bird's resource, and therefore he will begin to scream in a very demanding way in order to get what he wants, which is to be attached to you. You also, in most cases, get some pretty severe aggression towards other people in the household, specifically the people that the pair bonded person is closest to. So if the bird is bonded to the wife, it's usually the husband who's the recipient of attacks. Floor chasing is very common. And now that it is more common to keep birds with full wings, flighted attacks, mostly from the smaller cockatoos, are also occurring. I have dealt with feather damaging behavior. I've specialized in this for well over 2 decades. And I have now come to the conclusion that a good part of feather damaging behavior in adult birds is simply due to increased hormone production. It, in fact, is due to this syndrome. I believe the same is true for self-mutilation. I can cure self-mutilation cases. You know how I do it? Well, I'll tell you in a minute, because it would be the same way that you would deal with a bird like this. And then if all the rest of this isn't bad enough, some of these, especially umbrella cockatoos, develop cloacal prolapse, where they will push their cloaca to the outside of their body, where the mucous membranes can then dry out. So that needs emergency medical care, which is not easy to accomplish. Usually it means that a couple of sutures have to be put in the cloaca to make the opening smaller. Sometimes you don't get it right. It requires multiple anesthesia events in order to get the sutures just right. And if the problem is not corrected, the prolapse will continue to happen. I had a case this year referred to me by an avian veterinarian. This umbrella cockatoo had spent 10 years on this gentleman's mother's shoulder. And after she passed away, he began sitting on the owner's shoulder. And now it's 10 years down the line. And the situation was such that this gentleman was a hostage, because if he put the bird down onto a perch, the bird would be okay for a given period of time, but then the bird would say a sentence. He'd say, "Do you want something to eat?" That was putting the owner on notice that if he did not go over and pick that bird up and put him on his shoulder, that bird was going to prolapse intentionally. Very difficult. So most often the cockatoo is then relinquished, but that then just continues the problem, because it is very common for the staff at rescue organizations who also believe that cockatoos need a lot of petting to give them that. And because the cockatoo, you know, if he has formed a pair bond with a human, that's the only way he really knows to relate socially. So he's going to solicit that same type of attention from staff at the rescue. Most often, they're only too happy to provide that. So the bird doesn't learn anything new socially. And then a person, sooner or later, who resembles in some way the first pair bonded owner shows up at the rescue organization. How many times have you heard people say, he picked me? Well, most often he picked what you look like. And then the cycle continues. And what has happened is that the entire parrot's life gets hijacked by well-meaning parrot lovers like you and me. So here's what I see as the solution for this. I do think we need to stop breeding large cockatoos for sale as companion parrots. If they're not going to have problems in our homes, then they have to be well-weaned, and they really should be parent-reared. No breeder is going to keep a baby around for an entire year before they can sell them. So these larger cockatoos are always destined to have problems in our homes. I also think that their needs are too difficult to meet as adults. I also think that about the larger macaws. You know, larger birds need larger everything. And I think it's difficult for the average busy person to perhaps provide that. And then there has been the longstanding problem of cockatoo mate killing and abuse. It is not uncommon at all for a male and a female breeding pair to live together happily for years, and then one day the male kills the female. There has been a great deal of grief around that, and I do not know that to date that is not still occurring. And then for the smaller birds who can be weaned within a reasonable period of time, we really need to work towards adopting either co-parenting or parent rearing techniques, because we've been sold a bill of goods. It is not necessary to hand feed a parrot for it to be tame. Many of you know that I had the privilege of living at Cockatoo Downs, where Chris Shank maintains a flock of free-flighted cockatoos. I was there for 15 years. And this is a photo from one of those times. Chris had a pair, BB and Flash, who one year they decided that they were going to have babies no matter what. So they started digging holes in the ground. It just happened to be an especially wet spring in Oregon. So they were digging holes in the mud and then coming out completely mud covered. That was untenable. So she put up a nest box and she allowed them to have a clutch of a couple of babies, which she provided a home for. And this is the baby Star being preened by her mom, BB. And the truth is that if you have a good relationship with the parent birds, then the babies will be compliant also. They follow the lead of their parents. This is the natural design. If the parent bird steps up for the breeder, the baby's going to step up for the breeder. And you get a much better bird, a much more well-rounded, independent personality. And then we can totally rehabilitate the older cockatoo. So and this is what I do day in and day out, because most of these cases are all the same. I'm to the point now where I really think we would have very few behavior problems if we did not allow these pair bonds to form with our birds, but we do. So the important message is that there is a pathway back. It takes some work, but it is completely doable, and you can be very successful. So the first thing that we do is we identify the triggers that are in place for increased hormone production, and we correct those. Because if you have a cockatoo in your home right now who gets to sit on your shoulder or your lap or the back of your chair or whatever, I mean, you know if that bird has a pair bond with you. And if he does, you know for sure that he's experiencing increased hormone production. You also need to identify the problem behaviors and the conditions that maintain them. Then we're going to correct the things that set the stage for the problem to occur, the problem behavior to occur. Those are called the antecedents, and we're going to change the consequences that are maintaining some of these problem behaviors. And then we're going to teach new skills. And you can consider this as pretty much a formula for the rehabilitation of a large cockatoo. So if we examine diet first, we're going to reduce fats and carbohydrates in the diet because these are the categories of foods that produce energy. And consumption of them will result in increased hormone production. So you want to feed a good quality pellet, and hopefully one that is lower rather than higher when it comes to kilocalories per kilogram. That's the amount of energy production that the food offers the parrot. So for cockatoos, I am actually partial to either Rowdy Bush or Lafeber pellets. Harrison's Adult Lifetime is also okay. I do like to dilute the pellet by also offering a chop mix. So the bird has unlimited access to pellets, but also gets a well-made chop mix first thing in the morning. That way the bird can eat pellets when he senses that he needs them, but he also has an abundance of live, raw, fresh foods that can kind of dilute the nutritional density of that pellet. And then I like to provide a second foraging meal of the day, late afternoon, using the Lafeber Nutriberries and Ava Cakes. And I got to tell you, I'm not saying that simply because I happen to be delivering a webinar for the Lafeber company. I have been doing this forever because I figured out somewhere along the line that not only are these wonderful foods because they're formulated, they offer the same nutrition that pellets offer, but they have a fairly low profile when it comes to kilocalories per kilogram. So they too are not going to trigger a bird into high hormone production. So we feed a diet like that, and then we save all the seeds and nuts for the training that we're going to do with this bird. The second thing we're going to do regards the bird's social life. We're going to gradually reduce the amount of time that that bird spends physically close to the pair-bonded person. Now, the reason that we have to do this gradually is because the people never want to do this. Not ever. I've had one person, when I told her that she really shouldn't have her cockatoo on her shoulder, she surprised me by saying, "Oh, thank God. I thought I was supposed to do that. I hate it." And so, you know, in that case, we were able to just cold turkey the bird off the shoulder. You would think that this would cause birds a great deal of distress. It usually does not. But a gradual approach is always easiest, I think. It allows everybody to get used to things more slowly. So if the bird is not going to be perching on you anymore, you have to increase the perches available in your home to the bird. I've got lots of good suggestions for perches. I'm very specific about what I want people to buy because you can waste a lot of money on play stands that just simply don't really afford the bird enough to do. Then once we have enough perches in place, we're going to teach that bird to station. That word means that the bird chooses to remain on perches rather than on you physically. Now, as I've already said, most people become very sad about the need to do this. And they always ask me the same question. They say, well, then how in the world am I ever going to have a relationship with my bird? And my answer is, you're going to do some training. You're going to teach targeting first. Because in reality, when you form a bond through touch, there is not trust incorporated into that bond. You know, how many birds bite their pair bonded person if they get startled? It happens all the time. But if you train a bird, what really happens with training is this: when you provide a cue to say touch a target stick, you are lifting that bird slightly out of her comfort zone. And when she chooses to perform the behavior, and then you follow through with the reinforcer, a little bit of trust gets established in that relationship. And then you are going to continue to provide guidance through positive reinforcement. So there can be some real challenges with stationing. For the small birds, an easy station is just a basket. You can go to Goodwill and find a natural wicker basket that has a base broad enough that it's not going to tip over if a flighted bird lands on it or takes off, or even flaps his wings while he's on it. And you want a handle that is comfortable enough for them to perch on. And then that basket can go around with you, because the pair bonded bird is going to need to be in a certain proximity to you. And so this is how we achieve that. Now, some birds, I said that the stationing can be a challenge. These are the birds who are the boomerang bird, right? You put them on a perch, turn your back, and before you can even walk away, they have flown back onto your body again. Well, I had a bird like that. So I developed an approach that works very, very well. So I ask people, I'll say, you know, what's an average length of time that your bird is on your shoulder? Very often people say for about an hour, because that tends to be about the amount of time that they spend in the morning, maybe when they're getting ready to go to work, or in the evening, maybe they're taking care of other pets or the family or making food. And that's when the bird typically hitches a ride. So I ask them, for every hour that the bird is going to be on your shoulder, I want you to let him be there for 45 minutes, first of all, and then practice stationing for 15 minutes. So this idea has to do with filling up a bird's gas tank of need. Because if the bird's been away from you, say sleeping, or you've just come home from work, he's going to have an empty gas tank of need to be on your body. That's something that he really depends upon. So you know, trying to get him to station when you first come home may not be very successful. So I just say, put him on your shoulder for the first 45 minutes, but then put him on a station. And if you can't guarantee that he's going to stay there for even a minute, then what you do is you just stand right in front of that bird and you just feed reinforcers one after the other. And what will happen is that in the beginning, he's going to be real bouncy, showing that, you know, he really wants to get back to you. But if you're right there in front of him, giving him reinforcers like that, he's not going to be able to do it. And sooner or later, you'll see the bounciness start to wane. And at that point, then you're going to give a reinforcer, take one step back, one step forward again, and give another reinforcer. And then one step back, one step forward, and another reinforcer. And you would do that for several repetitions and until he stayed put and did not come off the perch when you took a step back. Then what you're going to do is you're going to give a reinforcer and take 2 steps back, then 2 steps forward, and then another reinforcer. So this teaches the bird to stay on the perch, but it also teaches him that it's okay to have a greater proximity between the bird and the person. So he begins to feel, oh, it's okay. You know, I can be on this perch. And then of course, on the perch, we're going to have the best perch with the best enrichment on there. So he's also enticed to be busy while he's there. And as you work on the stationing day in and day out, you'll find that your birds really prefer to be on the perch. And so you will always need to maintain this behavior. We know for a fact, science has taught us, that if you stop reinforcing a behavior, it will stop being offered by the animal. So this is something that I do on a daily basis with all my birds. I usually do it during that morning and evening hours when I'm up, I'm in the kitchen, I might be cleaning cages or feeding the birds, listening to the news, but I am still aware of my birds. They are in my vicinity, and I am going around when they, randomly, and just rewarding them with high value reinforcers for staying put on that perch. Now, this is very different than teaching a dog to station, because with dogs, there's typically a cue: go to your mat, the dog goes, we provide reinforcers, and then there's a release cue. Okay, you can get off. That is not what we do with parrots. What we do with parrots is we turn them into gamblers, because they will learn over time that if a treat is going to be delivered, it's going to be delivered on a perch, and they will choose then to stay on their perches. That's what they want to do. And then the work still isn't done, because what happens to a parrot, if you keep him on your shoulder for, a pretty significant period of time, a year or more, he's going to kind of lose his interaction with enrichment skills. He's just not going to be that interested. He's interested in being close to you in this warm, soft place. And many birds never learned to forage in the first place. So we do need to teach that, and it is 100% possible to teach that. If you have taught the bird targeting, you can use a target to introduce enrichment items. There's lots of ways that you can encourage a bird to begin to interact with enrichment. I'll tell you my new favorite trick for teaching birds to forage, and that is get a dog bowl that is about 8 inches around. This is if you have medium to larger parrots. So get your dog bowl. I like dog bowls because they're a little deeper than cooking pans typically. And then you're going to sprinkle whatever you think your bird will forage for on the bottom. And then you're going to get these little things called glass gems. These are ubiquitous, like aspergillus spores. You can find them at Walmart, online at Amazon. They're everywhere. Dollar stores have them. They're just little glass gems that are flat on one side so they don't roll. That's important. And so you put one layer of the glass gems on top of your foraging food. And the glass gems are so fascinating that they lure the bird over. Now, you do need a flat surface for this. And if any of you want to do a consultation with me, I will totally teach you how to do this. But then the bird learns to forage all on his own. It is so much easier to teach that concept of hidden food than in other ways that I've done it in the past. Okay, so then we also need to keep the bird off of the floor, because Cockatoos have a particular idiosyncrasy that I have not found in other parrots. If you put a cockatoo on a flat surface, like the back of the couch or a bed or the floor, the crest goes up, they start marching around, and before you know it, you have a cockatoo in a very high state of arousal, and that's not what you want. So don't take your cockatoo to bed or to the couch. It's got to be on a perch, and we must prevent cavity seeking. I'm sure you all know what that is, but just to throw out a few examples, that would be trying to get into a drawer or a closet or pantry, wanting to get inside of cardboard boxes or crawl under clothing. You've got to be on guard. If your bird has a particular place where he really, really, really wants to hang out, it's probably bad, shouldn't be there. And then we're going to continue to teach new behaviors and maintain future relationship through positive reinforcement. And you know what's really weird? Everyone is happier. I have never done this, meaning gotten the bird off of the owner's shoulder and established once again as an independent flock member in the family. I have never had that client be regretful or unhappy that we did it. And they're always surprised. That's why I use this word astonishing, because they find that they're actually happier. Whereas in the beginning, they were devastated to get this news that they couldn't have their cockatoo on their lap or shoulder anymore. Now they actually feel a new sense of freedom. And they are moreover delighted because they can tell that their bird is now happier. They hadn't realized that the bird wasn't happy before. They just assumed, I mean, this is what cockatoos need, right? But parrots are always happier behaving independently. So the result is really quite unexpected and a bit miraculous. And this is true for all other parrot species. The process is exactly the same. And another benefit of this is that you once again have a social system that is in balance. I really regard every single consultation that comes my way as a social system. That family, that client, and their birds and whatever other animals or kids they have, that's a social system. And when a bird forms a pair bond with a person, that creates an imbalance in that social system. It can even break marriages up. I've had it happen. I coined the term lover's triangle a long time ago because it's very common for one member to be pair bonded to the bird and the other member, you know, of the couple want to get rid of the bird. It can really break families up. So this is a terrible thing to allow to happen. This is my guy, Cyrano, who's 47 years old. He is a wild-caught bird. He has never bitten me. He is loud for about 5 minutes in the morning and about 5 minutes in the evening. Now, I adopted him from a client, and he did have a pair bond with her. So I know all this stuff because this is what I did with him, because I knew that he would try and replicate that pair bond with me. And I was not going to let that happen. And I haven't, well, he kind of thinks he has a pair bond with me, but he doesn't get to do any pair bonding stuff. So his opinion really doesn't matter. So these birds are happiest if we encourage them to be independent members of our family flock. And then we provide them with an excellent quality of life by focusing on providing them with the ability to perform natural behaviors and the ability to make as many choices as possible. Those are the two hallmarks of a happy parrot life in captivity. So that's all. Oh, good. I was hoping to leave enough time for questions today, and it looks like I have.
You do. Yes, that was perfect timing. That was,
Wonderful.
by the way, like that was insanely fascinating. I mean, and I think a lot of it just applies to other species in general. I mean, it's just some really good takeaways. And I'm excited to see what questions we have, because I know we've got some interesting ones. Okay, let's see. There's so much to digest.
Do you want me to open the Q&A and just answer them?
Oh no, I'll read them to you.
Okay.
Makes it, I think that might make it a little easier. This is from Adrian. Let's see. Okay, so the was still captive breed. Are there any studies, observations of wild Moluccans? I think this is in regards to the breeding aspect of it.
Not that I'm aware of. I think the only information came from Katie McElroy. She was the only one that I was aware of back then that was allowing larger cockatoos to rear their own babies.
Okay. And then Sharon wanted to know where they can find a copy of the paper the breeder in Ohio wrote about her observations. They'd love to learn more.
That was published in the Pet Bird Report back about
a while ago.
24 years ago, I'd say, I would guess. The only way to get a copy of it would be to find that magazine. And I'm afraid when I moved, I got rid of all my old Pet Bird Reports. I had every single one of them. So at any rate, I remembered the article well, and the way that she began it was she talked about receiving a call from a woman who was crying. She was sobbing and she was distraught because she had just adopted a 15-week-old Moluccan cockatoo, and it was crying and crying. It was an obvious case of weaning trauma. And the breeder, she had gone back to the breeder or the store and, wondered if she should feed the bird. And she had been advised, no, absolutely not. If you give him any more hand feeding formula, you will spoil her. She needs to learn to be without it. And so Katie's article was a comparison of that woman's experience versus what she had observed with her wild caught Moluccans and how they raised their own babies when they were not interfered with. Okay. It was pretty impressive.
Wow. Maybe someone can track that down and share a link or something.
I think Katie's still around. You can just Google Katie McElroy.
That's right. I remember that name. We had a question from SG asked, how do parent cockatoos wean their chicks off of physical attention as opposed to food? So there's a weaning off the food and is there weaning off of the physical attention?
It just happens naturally. By the time the babies fledge, then they show no further signs of needing that physical closeness, other than, natural interactions that would occur, like we saw between BB and Star there, the preening. They're always going to be familial relations, and therefore will have different interactions than they might have with a stranger cockatoo. Okay. But it's a matter, I believe, of a need having been satisfied. So this is a developmental process where things occur in a parallel manner. So not only is the baby becoming food independent, but he's getting ready to, he's got to get ready to leave the nest first. But, learning flight, becoming food independent, learning to perch independently and away from the parents, that all takes place quite naturally once the babies come out of the nest box. Okay.
We had a question from Anne, wanted to know, Anne Brooks, Anne, find a significant difference, I guess, from them, find a significant difference between sexual mature males and females' behavior Do you find the difference as well?
I would say that the males would tend to be more aggressive. I think with every parrot species, there is inclined to be one individual, either the male or the female, that takes on more of a defensive role. And so with parrotlets, that's going to be a female. If you want a sweet female, adopt a male. I mean, if you want a sweet parrotlet, adopt a male. Okay. If you want a sweet cockatoo, it's not fair to say this, but see, we're in answering this question, we're assuming that we're going to have problems. So what I would want to say is that if you do a good job of taking care of your cockatoo and maintaining that bird's independence, either a male or a female would make a wonderful companion. But when things go south, the males can be a bit more vehement in their aggression, let's say.
A little more effective. A little macho.
Yeah, and more determined. Definitely. Okay. I mean, it is a very frightening thing to have a large cockatoo chasing you across the floor or flying at you. I mean, that's terrifying.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So Jamie wanted to know what's included in the chop mix that you mentioned earlier. The recommended chop mix.
Yeah. Well, I make it 2 different ways. I'll tell you the way that you probably don't know about because I'm really excited about this. It's a new hack that a client actually gave me this idea because I told him how to make the chop mix the way I usually did it, which was to cook grains, finely chop a bunch of vegetables, throw in a bag of legume-based pasta, freeze it, defrost it, throw in some other things, and then serve it. But when I told him how to do that, he said, well, I'm not going to do that. I was like, okay, I'm not going to make you. But then he came back and he surprised me. So this is how I make chop now. And in fact, it's what I'm going to be doing this evening. So I will cook whole grains of some type. Those that I tend to rely on most are those with a lower glycemic index, with the exception of one. So I use brown rice, quinoa, and buckwheat, Russian toasted buckwheat to be exact. But then I do also like using kamut. Kamut is also called Eurasian wheat. And the buds themselves, the berries themselves, are very big and plump. And when I use some of that in my chop mix, the parrots will actually scoop out every single grain of the kamut. Now, that is foraging. That takes a lot of time. So now what I do is when I'm going to the store, I go to Walmart and I go to the freezer section. This is what I did yesterday. And I grab any frozen vegetables that they have there. And Walmart is the queen of frozen vegetables. So yesterday, when I did this, I got broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, green beans, sugar snap peas, chopped bell peppers. The sugar snap peas I got fresh. Chopped bell peppers, winter squash, chopped yams, sweet potatoes, corn, peas, edamame. I think that's about all. And then you go to the fresh vegetable section and you buy anything fresh that you couldn't find frozen. So this is going to cut your chop making time down by a lot. So you bring the vegetables home and you wash the fresh ones and you chop those up in your Cuisinart first. And you want the size of the vegetables to be just about the size of a kamut grain, so to speak, so that there's nothing big kind of standing out in the mix to capture a bird's attention. And then you take the bags of frozen vegetables. So You wash and chop up your fresh stuff. Then you take all the vegetables out, the bags of frozen vegetables that you're going to need to chop up because the pieces are too big to include in a chop mix. So that's going to be your broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, winter squash, and green beans, and some others. And all you have to do is run them under cold water for about 20 seconds in a strainer. So they're only partially defrosted. And then you just put them through the Cuisinart really fast, throw them into the mix and mix it up. So that mix is already starting to get cool. And then you throw in all the bags of frozen vegetables that you didn't have to chop. And you mix it all up. And you freeze it, freezes fast because you're not actually defrosting the frozen things in order to make the frost or the chop rather. And so this is what I've been doing ever since I moved to Indiana because the vegetables in the wintertime just were not anything that I wanted to feed. And now I'm kind of hooked on the process because there's no washing vegetables, and frozen vegetables are picked at the peak of freshness and then flash frozen. So the nutritional quantity is going to be, I think, even better. And my birds have not missed a beat. They don't even seem to care. They eat it just as well as they ate the other chop. And then when I do serve it, you know, I will defrost a bag, and then I do add other things like sometimes, freeze-dried fruit, dried goji berries, garbanzo beans, chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, you know,
Mix
that
it up.
kind of stuff. Yeah, mix it up. And they always go right for it. They just can't wait to see what's in. Oh, and sprouts. I sprout for myself too.
Wow. And wait, do you serve it like like frozen, room temperature? But how do you just?
No, I serve it right out of the refrigerator.
I was gonna say when it's like hot summer, maybe like a nice little popsicle.
Yeah, maybe. I know there are birds who do feed the chopped frozen, and the birds enjoy it that way as well. They just plop an ice cube in their dish and call it good. So, you know, whatever you can do.
All right. That sounds really healthy. You have some with your bird. We got a question from Robert about what is the best reinforcer? So what do you say?
The best reinforcer is the thing that your bird likes the most.
Which can be like, what are the options?
Okay, so in consultations, often people have been giving their birds treats. So if you want to get started helping the client to be successful right away, you're going to have to figure out what reinforcer does the bird already accept that you can use for training. So if the bird is eating some seeds in the diet, we gradually transition the bird off the seeds and we use those. But, you know, I had one consultation where the only things the bird liked were blueberries, grapes, and pasta. So that was a screaming case. We had to reward desirable behaviors and teach stationing because the bird had lived on his mom's bosom for about 19 years. And so we started with what we had, and then you can introduce new reinforcers. Now, what is most convenient for you to use? That's really the question. And my answer to that is nuts and seeds. Sunflower seeds make great reinforcers. So can safflower seeds and small nut pieces as well. Those have some nutritional benefit, as do the sunflower seeds. And so and most birds like those. The problem is, though, that birds are neophobic. So that's why I can't say to you, oh, walnuts are the best nut, hands down, to use as a reinforcer, because if your bird's never seen a walnut, he's not going to value that nut. So what you do is a preference assessment where you put an empty dish in the cage up high near a favorite perch, and you go to the store and you buy a small quantity of raw walnuts, pecans, almonds, cashews, pine nuts, peanuts, roasted, unsalted, out of the shell, and sunflower seeds, both out of the shell and in the shell. And then every morning until the bird discovers them, you just put one small piece of each of those types of items in the dish, because the bird just has to get used to looking at them. And then once he's used to looking at them, he'll start exploring them. He's not stupid. They're in a food dish. And so he's got a tip off there that they might be food. And then once the birds start to explore those items, they typically figure out what their favorites are. And then you can figure that out by putting the dish in the cage. Yeah. One more time, setting a timer for 15 minutes so you don't forget. And then you go and look at what's missing. And those are the things your bird values.
Oh, I love that. That's a great advice. Wow. Okay. Never thought of that. I mean, it's so simple yet brilliant. I love it. All right. Let's see if we have cruised through our hour. We do. Shoot. Gosh, let me see. We still have some questions. So, let's see, some really good questions too. Let me announce our winner real quick. Okay. So we do have a giveaway, and then we'll figure out we're gonna see. Our giveaway winner today is Amy Dillon. You're going to get the wonderful limited edition banana Nutriberries, and it's in the cool 50th anniversary gold tin. So there you go, as well as another Lafeber product of your bird's choice. So congratulations, Amy. Someone will reach out from the Lafeber office to get that sent out to you. Wow, Pamela, that was such a great oh my gosh. I'm trying to think of another species that might be so deserving of this like intense look. And oh, you have an idea. So let's hear it.
Green cheek conures.
Oh,
I actually
bird. Yeah.
I do more consultations about green cheek conures than any other species of bird.
That is okay. Yeah, I love it. And it's probably one of the most popular companion parrots as of, cockatiels and then green cheeks, right? It's like right up there. Okay, there you go. Hopefully we'll get that on the calendar soon. So
thank you. And I think somebody said macaws too. If you attach the chat for me. Wynn says conures seem to have a lot of the same issues as cockatoos. Actually, all birds. See, we do the same thing with every single bird. We put them on our shoulder, a pair bond forms, behavior problems result, and then you get to work with me, which is a lot of fun and very fairly priced. So we know. But if you don't put your bird on your shoulder, you're a lot less likely to have problems. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. There we go. We can do a whole thing on birds on shoulders. There we go. And the fallout with that. Right? So. Oh my goodness. Okay. This is very informative. Wow. Okay. So we'll be having another, your episodes so far. We're like on number 2, and I hope everyone's enjoying these as much as I am. I mean, these are just awesome topics. So just real quick announcement for next Friday, we're going to be back on with Dr. Tom Tolley, another great episode of Ask the Vet. So if you have any vet question, save it for next Friday and tune in and join us then. Pamela, I just want to say thanks again, and I can't wait to see next episode with you. So Translating Parrot, very exciting new webinar series, and again, awesome presentation. So thanks.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank everyone who is adding to the chat. Words of appreciation for today. This was a lot of fun for me. I'm so happy to be here, and thank all of you for coming. I greatly appreciate it.
Yes, I mean, I know everyone appreciates this. We had a lot of enthusiastic. I mean, this was a topic that I have wanted to see for a very long time, and I'm so glad that you were able to present it for us on Cockatoo. So, all right, everyone. On that note. Till next time, everyone have a great weekend. All the best to you and your flock, and stay safe. Pamela, thanks again. This is awesome.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. Okay, bye-bye.